When we talk about what love looks like after childhood trauma, we're diving into one of the most complex, yet transformative aspects of human healing. Childhood trauma doesn't just leave emotional scars, it fundamentally rewires how we understand love, connection, and safety in relationships. The work of renowned physician and trauma expert Gabor Maté reveals that those who experienced early trauma often develop what might seem like contradictory patterns, an intense longing for love coupled with an equally intense fear of it. This isn't weakness or confusion, it's the brilliant survival mechanism of a child's mind trying to protect itself in an unsafe world. The first thing we need to understand is that childhood trauma teaches us that love comes with conditions, unpredictability, or even danger. A child who grows up with inconsistent caregiving, emotional neglect, or abuse learns that the very people who should provide safety can also be sources of pain. This creates what Maté describes as an internal conflict. The authentic self that naturally seeks connection becomes buried under protective layers designed to prevent further hurt. The child learns to read faces, anticipate moods, and become hyper-vigilant to any sign of potential rejection or abandonment. What makes this particularly challenging is that these survival strategies, while necessary during childhood, often persist into adulthood where they no longer serve us. The nervous system that learned to be constantly on guard doesn't simply switch off when we encounter genuine love. Instead, it may interpret kindness as manipulation, consistency as boring, or emotional availability as weakness. This is why healthy relationships can feel uncomfortable or even threatening to someone with a trauma history. Their system is wired to expect the other shoe to drop. The beautiful irony that Maté often discusses is that healing happens through the very thing that trauma taught us to fear: genuine, consistent, attuned connection. But this healing love looks different from what movies or society might tell us. It's not passionate intensity or dramatic gestures. Instead, it's characterized by what trauma therapists call earned security. Relationships where both people can be authentically themselves without fear of abandonment or engulfment. This kind of love is patient with triggers, curious about reactions rather than judgmental, and creates space for the wounded parts of ourselves to emerge and be seen. One of the most profound insights from trauma research is that love after childhood trauma requires a fundamental shift in how we define intimacy. For many trauma survivors, intimacy was associated with violation of boundaries, emotional overwhelm, or the loss of self. True intimacy in healing relationships involves maintaining a sense of individual identity while also creating deep connection. It's about being able to say no without fear of abandonment, to express needs without shame, and to receive care without feeling like a burden.
The nervous system changes that occur with childhood trauma also affect how love is literally felt in the body. Maté emphasizes that trauma lives in the body, not just the mind. For someone with a trauma history, the physical sensations of love, increased heart rate, vulnerability, emotional openness, can trigger the same physiological responses as danger. This is why healing often requires not just psychological work, but also nervous system regulation. Learning to breathe deeply during moments of intimacy, to ground yourself when triggered, and to communicate your needs clearly becomes essential skills in post-trauma love. What's particularly hopeful about this understanding is that it removes blame and shame from the equation. When we understand that our reactions to love are based on neural pathways carved by survival, we can approach ourselves with compassion rather than judgment. The person who pushes away when they most need comfort isn't being difficult, they're following programming that once kept them alive. The person who becomes anxious when relationships feel too good isn't self-sabotaging, they're responding to internal warning systems designed to protect them from disappointment. The journey toward healthy love after trauma often involves what therapists call reparenting, learning to give ourselves the consistent, attuned care we didn't receive as children. This might involve developing a relationship with our internal voice that is kind rather than critical, setting boundaries that honor our needs rather than everyone else's, and learning to self-soothe during moments of activation. Maté often speaks about how we must become the parent to our inner child that we always needed. This process isn't linear, and it's important to understand that healing doesn't mean the trauma never happened or that all triggers disappear. Instead, it means developing the capacity to move through challenges with greater ease and self-compassion. In healthy post-trauma relationships, both people understand that healing is ongoing, that triggers will arise, and that these moments are opportunities for deeper connection rather than threats to the relationship's stability. The role of attachment in post-trauma love cannot be overstated. Childhood trauma often disrupts our natural attachment systems, leading us with what psychologists call insecure attachment styles. We might become anxiously attached, constantly seeking reassurance and fearing abandonment. We might develop avoidant attachment, keeping people at arm's length to prevent getting hurt. Or we might experience disorganized attachment, swinging between desperate clinging and cold withdrawal. Understanding these patterns helps us recognize them as adaptive responses rather than character flaws. One of the most beautiful aspects of healing through relationships is witnessing what Maté calls the authentic self beginning to emerge. This is the part of us that exists beneath all the protective strategies and survival mechanisms. The authentic self is naturally loving, creative, and curious about connection. As we experience consistent safety in relationship, this authentic self begins to trust enough to show itself more regularly. Partners in healing relationships often describe moments of seeing each other's true self shine through, creating profound intimacy and connection. The concept of co-regulation becomes crucial in post-trauma love. This is the process by which one person's regulated nervous system helps calm and organize another person's dysregulated system. In healthy relationships after trauma, partners learn to become sources of regulation for each other. This might involve staying calm when your partner is triggered, offering physical comfort in ways that feel safe, or simply providing consistent presence during difficult moments. But here's where I want to pause and ask you something that might be stirring in your mind as we explore this together. Have you ever noticed how your body responds when someone shows you genuine care? Do you find yourself tensing up, questioning their motives, or feeling like you don't deserve their kindness? If these questions resonate with you, you're not alone, and there's nothing wrong with these responses. They're actually quite common among people who experienced early trauma, and recognizing them is the first step toward healing. Thank you for clicking on this video and taking time from your day to explore these important topics with me. Your willingness to examine these patterns shows incredible courage and self-awareness. Understanding the difference between trauma bonding and genuine love is another crucial aspect of post-trauma relationships. Trauma bonding occurs when we mistake intensity for intimacy, drama for passion, or chaos for excitement. These patterns feel familiar because they mirror the unpredictable emotional landscape of traumatic childhoods. Genuine love, by contrast, might initially feel boring or unfamiliar because it lacks the adrenaline rush of constant uncertainty. Learning to appreciate and trust calm, consistent love is often one of the biggest challenges for trauma survivors. The healing process often involves grieving not just what happened to us, but also what we missed out on. This grief is necessary and healthy. It's our psyche's way of acknowledging the loss and making space for new experiences. Many people in post-trauma healing describe feeling sad not just for their past pain, but for all the years they spent protecting themselves from the very love they actually craved. This grief, while painful, is often a sign that healing is occurring and that the heart is opening to new possibilities. Communication in post-trauma love requires special attention and skill. Traditional relationship advice often focuses on techniques that assume both people have relatively secure attachment and regulated nervous systems. Post-trauma communication acknowledges that triggers can arise suddenly and that both people need tools for navigating these moments with compassion. This might involve having code words for when someone is feeling overwhelmed, taking breaks during difficult conversations to regulate, or simply naming when trauma responses are being activated. The importance of boundaries in post-trauma love cannot be overstated. For many trauma survivors, boundaries were violated early and often, leading to confusion about where they end and others begin. Learning to identify, communicate, and maintain healthy boundaries becomes a cornerstone of healing relationships. This isn't about building walls, it's about creating healthy membranes that allow intimacy while maintaining individual integrity. Good boundaries actually increase intimacy because they create safety for both people to be authentic. Physical intimacy after trauma requires particular sensitivity and awareness. The body that experienced violation or neglect needs time and patience to learn that touch can be safe, pleasurable, and healing. This often involves slowing down, checking in frequently, and honoring the body's responses without judgment. Partners in healing relationships learn to see physical intimacy as an opportunity for nervous system healing rather than just physical pleasure. The goal becomes creating experiences that help the body learn new associations with touch and closeness. One aspect that often surprises people is how much laughter and play can be part of post-trauma healing. Trauma tends to create seriousness and hypervigilance, but genuine healing relationships often involve rediscovering joy, spontaneity, and playfulness. This isn't about ignoring the serious work of healing, but rather about creating balance and helping the nervous system remember that life can be safe enough for fun. Play becomes a form of therapy, teaching the system that relationships can be sources of delight rather than just survival. And here's where I'm going to do something a little unexpected. If this exploration of love and healing is resonating with you, if you're finding yourself nodding along or having moments of recognition, maybe give this video a like. I know, it feels weird to ask for a like in the middle of talking about trauma, but here's the thing. Your engagement helps these conversations reach other people who might desperately need to hear them. Your like is actually an act of service to someone else who's struggling to understand why love feels so complicated after trauma. So if this feels helpful, hit that like button as a way of saying, yes, these conversations matter. The role of professional support in post-trauma love deserves mention here. While healing relationships can be profoundly therapeutic, they shouldn't be the only source of healing. Trauma-informed therapy, whether individual or couples-based, provides tools and insights that even the most loving partner cannot. Therapists trained in trauma work understand the neurobiological aspects of healing and can guide both individuals and couples through the process with expertise and objectivity that loved ones cannot provide. Self-compassion emerges as perhaps the most crucial skill in post-trauma love. The internal critic that developed during traumatic childhoods often becomes the biggest obstacle to receiving and giving love in adulthood. Learning to speak to ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a dear friend transforms not only our relationship with ourselves, but our capacity for intimate relationships with others. This internal shift often precedes and enables external relationship healing. The concept of reparative relationships speaks to how certain relationships can actually heal old wounds. These aren't necessarily romantic relationships. They can be friendships, therapeutic relationships, or even relationships with pets or nature. What makes them reparative is their consistency, attunement, and safety. Over time, these relationships create new neural pathways that compete with and eventually override the old trauma-based patterns. Integration becomes the goal rather than the elimination of trauma responses. Maté often speaks about how healing doesn't mean becoming someone different, but rather becoming more fully ourselves. In post-trauma love, integration means acknowledging our history while not being defined by it. It means being able to share our story without being overwhelmed by it, and to receive love while maintaining our sense of self.
The ripple effects of post-trauma healing extend far beyond individual relationships. When someone learns to love and be loved after trauma, they often become sources of healing for others. They model what recovery looks like. They offer understanding to fellow survivors, and they contribute to breaking generational patterns of trauma. Their children, if they choose to have them, grow up with parents who understand nervous system regulation, emotional attunement, and the importance of secure attachment. The timeline for healing is unique to each person, and it's important to resist pressure to get over trauma or reach certain milestones by specific times. Some people experience relatively rapid shifts in their capacity for love and connection, while others require years or even decades of gentle, patient work. Neither path is wrong or better. They simply reflect different nervous systems, different trauma histories, and different life circumstances. As we near the end of our exploration together, I want to reflect on something profound that emerges from understanding post-trauma love. There's something incredibly beautiful about witnessing someone learn to receive love after trauma. It's like watching a flower that's been closed tight against harsh weather slowly open its petals to gentle sunlight. The vulnerability required to let love in after being hurt is perhaps one of the most courageous acts a human being can perform. And when that courage is met with genuine care and consistency, the healing that unfolds is nothing short of miraculous. The hope that emerges from this understanding is that trauma, while painful and lasting, doesn't have the final word in our love story. Our capacity for connection, intimacy, and joy can not only be restored, but can actually become deeper and more meaningful because of what we've survived. The person who has learned to love after trauma often brings a quality of presence, appreciation, and authenticity to relationships that is profound and healing for everyone involved. If this exploration has touched something in you, if it's helped you understand yourself or someone you love a little better, I'd be grateful if you'd give this video a like. And if you feel moved to share your own experience or insights in the comments, please know that your voice matters and could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Consider checking out the next video that's appearing on your screen. And if these conversations feel valuable to you, you might want to subscribe to Not What It Seems. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and remember that your journey toward love and healing is valid, important, and worthy of patience and compassion.